Today's responsibilities of the local board secretary will be discussed. We have some objectives that we'd like to go over today and discuss who is the local board secretary and what you actually do. Also advise why a local board secretary is necessary. We have maybe a board member in here and they're necessary because why do you think? They do all the work, right? And they bring everything to the board meeting and make sure everything runs properly. Explain the duties and responsibility of the local board secretary, as well as discuss the best practices when it comes to what a local board secretary needs to do. We'll also be discussing our spreadsheet, our local board portal, and the high 3-year calculator, some things that may be new to some of you that are local board secretaries as well. So who is the local board secretary? It's actually defined in statute to state the local board secretary shall be set up through ARS 38847M. And this person is actually appointed by the local board. So actually in the board meeting, they actually should say this is who the new local board secretary is, because you local board secretaries will have access to certain things that not everybody else has on the board, especially the local board portal we'll be talking about a little bit later. So make sure that's in the minutes of your meeting, because that's how we know who the contact person is from our office. Okay, why is the local board secretary needed? Because the administration of the system and the responsibility for making provisions for each employer is vested within the local board. The local board secretary is responsible for that these actions and decisions are made and carried out accordingly. All the administrative tasks are done through the local board secretary and associated to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, if you will, on the paperwork that's submitted. Why does the local, what do they actually do? Let's look at some of the duties overview and some of the best practices. If we look at some of the duties that come to a local board secretary, we'd say you would actually complete and submit all of the paperwork necessary for all benefits that are done. Now that's a normal retirement, a disability retirement, survivor paperwork. Anytime you have a new person that comes on board, you want to make sure all of that's documented in the minutes of the meeting. You assist the board with communicating to the members regards to what their benefits might be. In other words, you're the key person, the pivotal person that would help the board function on a regular basis and have your quarterly meetings, monthly meetings, or semi-annual meetings. So you're meeting at least twice a year. You're responsible for keeping all the paperwork for all the minutes of the meeting as well. Now, what do you do with those minutes as soon as you're done? Within 20 days, you send them to where? Public safety. You send them down here. Even if they're draft minutes, we need to see those minutes so we can kind of see that you're functioning and doing the right things as far as decisions that are made, so we can back it up to the payments that we make to any of the retirees. Does that make sense? Okay. And also you want to assist the members on any benefit-related questions. Oftentimes, in the past, we've actually created a PowerPoint presentation for you on the local board seminar, on the local board training website, that you can use to benefit, explain the benefits to your members. Does that make sense? So, we've tried to provide a lot of documentation for you to have your own seminars in your local area to explain benefits to the members as well. Now, when it comes to retirement paperwork, you make sure you ensure that there's accuracy on all paperwork submitted to the system. Now, this is kind of an interesting concept because everything has to run through the local board secretary. Any active member that's required, any action that's taken has to be done through the local board. Any benefit paperwork, as we talked about, maybe for a normal retirement, for disability retirement, for survivor paperwork, a guardian, a death, or drop. Now you might be looking at that list and saying, wow, I didn't know there were so many options. But there are, and we'll get into the details of each of those options and how the spreadsheet that we have designed will be able to help you with that. So it's also staying connected with the system. Most interaction between our system, public safety, and corps is done through the employer. It's handled by the local board secretary, especially for member eligibility. In other words, anytime a new member comes on board, are you voting on that in the local board? Absolutely, because we need to know on record that you've accepted a new member and they're making contributions. Any questions of accredited services or transfers of members from one system to another? Maybe they've worked in Scottsdale for a while and they want to go to Wilcox, or they want to go to Yavapai County. we can help with that paperwork, and the local board secretary should notate that in the minutes of the meeting. Any questions on calculating any benefits? Now, our office doesn't calculate the benefits. You do as a local board secretary, and then present that to the local board to vote on. So it's an action item on each thing, each time that you meet. So we really shouldn't pay a benefit, and we don't, unless you voted on it by the local board, because it's locally handled in that situation. Any issues with completing member benefit paperwork as well? And we'll get into some specifics and examples of perhaps some things that we found here in the office that has not always been done properly, to help you in the process of making sure all the paperwork is filled out properly going forward. I find it important that you communicate with the membership as well. Traditionally, the local board secretary is responsible for any meeting notices, annual member statements that are given out, statute changes affecting the plan, the local board decisions, and the local board elections. Now, I assume you're an officer on the local board, and was an election done in your area? Yes. And you're voted to be put on the board as a member of the local board? Yes. Because there's 2 that represents the membership and 2 represent the employer group, and then the chairman. That's how each of the boards should be set up. So with that said, elections are done, and the local board secretary may need to run those as well, run those elections and make sure it's done with somewhat, we call it an independent and a secret ballot type situation, as the law states. So anytime the board makes a decision on a refund or anything else, a benefit payment, the local board needs to have that on the agenda and vote on it. And who puts it on the agenda? The local board secretary, in connection with the chairperson. All right, so all of your local board meetings are very important. In conjunction with the local board, you not only develop the agenda for each of the meetings, but you ensure that the meeting notices are posted 24 hours in advance in accordance with the open meeting law, and you'd understand the application of the open meeting laws to the local board, and you'd record and prepare the minutes of the meeting. Now, why do we talk about this? Because this is important. This is an open meeting law and has to be notified, and it has to be posted, and it has to be done in accordance with the law. Now, how do you assist the members? Most members look to their local boards to get questions and answers. Now, as a local board member, do they come to you to get the questions and answers, or do you refer them to the local board secretary? Send them to the secretary. That's the best way to do it. So the secretary should be able to answer most any general benefit questions moving forward. Perhaps somebody wants to know about service purchases. In other words, they want to purchase military time. What would the local board secretary do? Any idea? You contact our office. That's what I want to make sure the point is made. We have an active members group, and we'll give you their information in a few minutes, because if they want to purchase time, we handle the service purchases. Then we notify the local boards of those service purchases, and that'll be a part of the members' record going forward. How about calculating retirement estimates? Who does that? Each of the local board secretaries, absolutely. So we actually had a member call the other day and said, "Oh, can you help me calculate my benefit?" And he says, "No, you need to talk to the local board secretary." And he says, "Oh, my local board secretary to call you." So that's not the that's not the line of communications we'd like. We'd like the local board secretary to find out how to do it, and we're happy to help you, step you through that process. And that's pretty much what this seminar is about today, to make sure that's done properly. If a person needs a benefit option in drop, or a normal retirement, or a disability, all of those types of benefits that are calculated are done through the local board secretary. These inquiries are usually done, in a personal or one-on-one basis. Now, the member can do some of this, like find their estimates, if they go into the members-only website. Are you familiar with that? Have you ever signed up for the members-only website? Not yet. Okay, so maybe after today you might want to go back. You can actually go in and get a password and pull up your contribution history as a member. And you can also go through the process of calculating what your benefit might be if you work 20 years. We have on the database a way to collect all that information and then view it by the member. So if nothing else comes out of this class, hopefully you go back and encourage all of your members to do what? Sign up for the members-only portal on the website, okay? Because that's one of the best tools the secretary can have, in order to help them do their job more efficiently. It'll cut down on some of your questions, but also educates the members on maybe an estimate can be done on the website. It gives them a rough estimate, basically what they would get after a period of time. Let's talk a little bit about the best practices then. How do you establish consistency and efficiency within your organization? There's a couple of things we found that are really good ideas. You create templates for any correspondence that you have or frequently documents that are needed. For example, if a member is hired and he goes through a pre-physical before he's actually starting in, you can actually do a pre-existing notice to that member to let them know what information that you had from the doctor stating that he may have a medical condition that may prevent him from a disability later on. Okay? And you can have a template for that and notify the member. In every case, there's a pre-existing condition. It's a really good idea to make sure that's notated and sent to the member and in his file. Okay? What about any disability retirement decision? Let's talk a little bit about that. You know, you can have a template to say you've applied for the disability. You could have a template to say, yes, we've received your application and you're moving forward with that process. You could have local board meeting notices and minutes, somewhat of a template, and you kind of fill in the blanks. Or agenda items can all be done on a template type situation as well. And on those minutes that are submitted, you need to have a few things on there, like the location of where it's at, the time the meeting starts, the date in which it transpired. You need to have a roll call on the minutes to say who's there and who's not there. You know, state the person made it or didn't make it, they're present or they're not. And then each action item that comes up, and you're making an action item that you're voting on a person's normal retirement or whatever it might be. So that can be very specific. Or you're accepting new members. You may have 5 new members at one time, or 2 new members. They all should be on the minutes of that meeting. Okay? So with that said, let's look at another best practice. You need to set reminders for paperwork that are due. All the completed retirement paperwork received to PSPRS by the 10th of the month is processed for that particular month. Now we have to have a hard and fast deadline of the 10th of the month, if you're not aware of that. And why do you think that is? It's because we have from the 10th until about the 20th to get it keyed into the database, and so this member would be able to receive the pension. Now, what happens if it comes in the 11th or 12th or 13th? It may not get paid that month. I want to make sure that's very clear. So you need to make sure it's here on the 10th or before the 10th if your board is met on that particular item, and you can move forward with that. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Some boards say, oh, sorry, we didn't get it to you. And what do we think we have to say? Oh, sorry, we can't pay the guy. You better call him. Let him know. Okay? So that's a hard and fast rule to make sure you understand that the 10th of the month is important. Another best practice is to create retention procedures for local boards. For your minutes, you should have your minutes in some file folder somewhere. You may have member files, both on the active side and the retired side, because you may need to refer back to them at a certain point in time. So it's important that you keep the records. A couple of other best practices is to sign up for the local board portal. Now you can see we're going to go to this in just a few minutes, but the local board portal is an important website portal that we have designed specifically for who? The local board secretary. You see on the left hand side here, there's the members only website. That's where the members would sign up, like anybody who's contributing or anybody that's retired. The middle section is for the employers to send in their contributions. The one on the right-hand side, which is called the local board website, is designed for local board secretaries only, because I'm going to show you a little something that you can sign into and get a lot of data that you probably didn't know that was available to you prior to this meeting. So what's another best practice is usually to ask other local board for tips that maybe have helped them. In other words, you might want to visit with Benson or Bisbee or somebody in your area. Scottsdale would visit with somebody up here, Yavapai. It's always nice to visit with different groups that have already been through that process. I know Phoenix has been very helpful with a lot of groups that may call because they have their procedures set up. They're one of the bigger agencies. They've got the most retirees. They have the most contributing members. It's always good to see what practices they may have as well. So let's look at some of the tools and resources that have been designed and developed for the local board secretaries to help their members. The local board training section of PSPRS website. This has all the documents and all the things that a local board secretary would need at this point that we've found. Because as we've gone around and talked to different groups, they'd say, can you develop something about this topic? And we have developed that and posted it on the website to help you out. And we'll go to that in just a few minutes. On there we have frequently asked questions. We have a training schedule that's available. We have a local board newsletter, and we have the videos of past trainings or webinars that we've done as well. And this is what we were talking about before we got started in the meeting, that this is a great place for the local boards to review that information. If you're not sure how to do a disability, you can go to the local board training website, click on disabilities, and it'll step you through that whole process. Okay? How many of you have received our local board newsletters? Oh, this is the first time I've seen everybody raise their hand. This is wonderful. Okay, so we try to provide those to you about every 2 months with perhaps legislative updates, our investment returns we've been putting in there recently. So those are important to see, and those are important also for the local board members that are on the board to see it. So we send it to the secretaries, and the secretaries should distribute that information to the local boards in a timely fashion. Some tools to help you process a retirement. We actually have a retirement manual available on the website, which we're going to go to in just a minute. There's one that's prior to anybody who was hired before that particular date, and there's one that's provided for somebody who's retired after that date as well. The retirement spreadsheets, we're going to spend quite a bit of time on that retirement spreadsheet in just a minute as well. They're set up for public safety, and they're set up for corrections officers' retirement plan as well. So you are the key contact for resources to your members. You actually have a member's handbook that's available out there. Has anybody seen that member's handbook? Just by a show of hand, on the local board training website. So if somebody wants to know what their benefits are, you refer them to the member's handbook, and hopefully that'll answer 99% of their questions, if not 100%. The members only website we spoke about just a minute ago. That's where the member can go find out their own estimates if they'd like to, see their contribution history as well. Okay? We also have the YouTubes that are set up from our trainings, and also PSPRS Facebook page. So we've got a lot of tools and resources that we haven't had in the past. Okay, what we'd like to do is make sure you know some key players that are here at the office. And my name's Don Miner, as we mentioned, Robert Ortega, and help answer questions from our active members department. We have some additional help that we talked about for transfers or purchasing time. And that's LaDawn Toger, and our retired members and insurance department is Bonnie Brown. Have any of you ever talked to any of these individuals here? They're very helpful and can help with most situations. So again, if the member's active, this would be the key contact, LaDawn. If the person is ready to retire, Bonnie could help in those situations as well.